schools, their pros and cons, Edinburgh, London, Stockholm, and Paris. And he said this instead: I suspect there is more value in physics, which is what medicine was called in those days, to be learned from the honest, candid observations of an old practitioner who has past all desire of more business, having made his fortune, and who by experience has discovered the inefficacy of most remedies and modes of practice, than from all the formal lectures of all the universities upon earth. Benjamin Franklin, 1772. Thank you very much for your attention. And I hope that gives a background to some of the things you'll be hearing in the rest of this morning's program.
Thank you very much, Stuart. As you can see, we're moving from the general to the specific and moving more into, now, which I will do, into devices. I will be speaking on behalf of the Association for Ethics in Spine Surgery, and I would like to tell you how the association was started and what its goals are. And the best way to do this, as Stuart has shown, is to relate to a story. This is an X-ray of a patient with 2 Charité lumbar disc replacements. It's essentially a plastic ball and cup that's sandwiched between 2 metal end plates, and it's meant to allow for motion in the disc when it's replaced. And it's originally implanted to eliminate back pain from degenerated discs. When the FDA first approved this artificial disc, I was intrigued, as were hundreds of other physicians in this country and around the world. Being here at the university, I feel it's necessary to take the time to look at really the details of a device when it's approved. And this includes studying the process by which it was approved and the data used to get to that end before it's used in the American public. And that's where the problem began. I found out that there were serious flaws in this study.
Press it twice and see if you respond to that.
The Charité study has a lot in common with Swiss cheese. They both have lots of holes. And I'm going to go just briefly into what some of those holes are. The first 26%, or first quarter of all patients that received the disc replacement, were excluded from the final results of the study. Usually those are the ones that have more complications. The control group to which it was compared had a 60% failure rate. And that was actually the cages that Stuart was showing a few minutes ago, that they were ultimately seen to have a 60% failure rate. And that is not a hard or high bar to jump when you have an experimental group that has to meet those results or exceed them. 2/3 of the patients at the end of the study that had the disc replacement were still on daily narcotics. And remember, the point of the disc replacement was to get rid of pain. The intended motion was not measured as an endpoint of success, which is actually flexion extension. Motion itself was not normal. These are hard plastic and metal things. There's no shock absorption at all. And the FDA engineer that was evaluating the study criticized the testing itself as being inadequate. The total time was 24 months for the trial, just 2 years, which is relatively short, and we're only talking about 204 patients, which is small, for translating a study to use a device to translate to a nation of 350 million. I wrote to the FDA for answers to these questions about the quality of the study, and in particular, I wanted to see the adverse events reports of the initial patients that were excluded from the study, because usually the initial patients have the problems, and if you're a surgeon and you're going to do something, you want to really know what to anticipate as a difficulty. To the FDA's credit, they were very prompt in their reply. They didn't actually answer any of my questions, but they provided merely a summary of the results. In addition, they also sent me this wonderful brochure about the Charité disc from the manufacturer about why, if I had back pain, I should have a Charité disc implanted. And then to add insult to injury, they charged me $3.94 for the packet. I deliberately refused to pay this bill. And I'm thinking Peter went from the Department of Justice is here, so just forget I said that. But I'm not paying it anyway. So finally, as if I don't get the hint enough, I then foolishly called the FDA on the phone to speak with the official in charge. And I was told that getting the adverse events reports was not possible, that these were trade secrets. And they couldn't reveal it. And also, I asked about the excluded patients. Why were they excluded? And he said, quote unquote, they were for the doctor's purposes to get their feet wet. I'm talking about fathers and mothers and brothers and sons. Given all of this, how did it result in the popular belief that this was the next big thing, so to speak? The answer is marketing. It's a great tool when it's used for the right purpose. It is a dangerous tool when it has the wrong intent behind it. Major medical societies became involved. Many were consultants with the manufacturers. Their journal articles and media announcements were aggressively marketed. And even today, if you look on the internet, there's not one spine site, other than the Association for Ethics in Spine Surgery, that is not sponsored in part or in whole by industry. And patients now have no clue about that, nor do most well-meaning doctors. Soon the media became wise to these concerns, and as part of their research, I was interviewed for this as being critical of the Charité disc. And I'm sorry to say I was correct in my prediction that there would be many failures of the device to function as intended. Today, one of the most painful parts of this entire situation for me are the numerous emails and letters that I get from patients around the world that have had these devices that have failed and are suffering in excruciating pain 24/7. To this day, I'm not sure how to respond to so many of these. And these are the types of emails that I regularly get, on average a couple a week. They're all different patients. I had back pain and now severe back pain with nerve pain down both legs. I can hardly stand it. It's every day. Another patient, I'm very depressed and need to keep my job and family, but it gets harder each day. The disruption to the family life is amazing. I mean, losing houses, losing spouses, kids leaving. I basically stay in bed at least 22 hours a day. Another patient, nurse came into the waiting room and Dr. So-and-so really just wishes that you would go away. That was verified. The husband and wife were both in the room, and Dr. So-and-so was one of the investigators in the initial IDE, the Investigational Device Exemption Study for the Charité. Okay. I was the second person in the U.S. to have the procedure, receive coverage, national news stations. After experiencing complications, Dr. So-and-so number 2 immediately discontinued all press coverage, today completely bedridden. Dr. So-and-so number 2 was a different investigator in the original ID study as well. Another patient, no doctor in the state will see me. All of them told me that I had to go back to the one that did the surgery. And many of these patients seem to be left hanging. There's no real exit strategy for the failures, and often the doctors that did it, not sure what went wrong, and nobody else in the area or the state frequently want to touch these people. The last one is from a 26-year-old German woman whose husband sent me a 24-page letter, and in complete desperation. Another day, happy day forthcoming. Hope Anastasia will wish for death less than 4 times today. And I'm always moved when I get these because I'm really impressed by the severe, constant degree of pain these patients are in. Even though I've done orthopedics for 20 years and seen enough car accidents, it's impressive. and every day there seem to be more in number. A minority of the complications are gross, such as this, which, as you can see, the prosthesis is dislocated or popped out of the inner space. And it can be life-threatening because the vena cava and the iliac veins are just in front there, which is what that's pushing into. But really, the more of the problem is this. In 2007, the UCI Biomechanics Lab, and the director is here, Dr. Tylee up there, we did the first comprehensive analysis of the biomechanical reason for lumbar disc replacement failures. And our results showed that, in short, there was an inherent design flaw in the calculation of the center of rotation for the normal lumbar spine. And it's a fact that actually had been shown 25 years earlier in a paper that was done on volunteers, which is actually sort of trumps the experiments done now, which are really computer simulation models. Yet this paper wasn't ever cited by anybody because it would be quite a marketing problem. In short, the center of rotation is not where the disc replacement manufacturers believe it is. And as a result of forcing a new center of rotation to be where there isn't one, you have two centers of rotation. The end result is that the little joints in the back of the spine called facet joints get destroyed. And that leads to debilitating arthritis and pain and sometimes fractures. I won't go into this very long, but on the right side there are normal facet joints. There are two little joints at every level in the spine. They share all the body weight that goes through them, with 1/3 of it going to the disc, which is in front. Normally, the disc in front is soft and cushioning. Now, on the left side, the shiny thing is the disc replacement, and you can see the facets there. Those are the same facets as on the right side, just 6 months after that disc replacement was put in. And those are terrible facets. I won't dwell on it, but I can't avoid it. These are destroyed cystic changes. Things are very disrupted. It should be nice and clean like this. And since 2/3 of your body weight goes through that, it's very painful. That type of change normally takes 10 to 20 years to develop, normally. In this case, 6 months after the replacement. How did such a bad paper, in my opinion, with so many failures that I was seeing, get approved and sold really as a bill of goods to the American public? The doctors and patients reading the papers thought that the studies were unbiased and were written by independent and objective physicians. Namely, this appeared to be independent validation. And that's the holy grail of scientific studies. This is the key to the entire problem, in my opinion. Doctors and patients must be able to rely on journal studies and reports as being unbiased. And they need to know when they're not. Here's an example. This just came out last week. It's another lumbar disc replacement called the ProDisc. Same type of exclusion of initial patients, similar holes as the other one, which I'm not going to go into. Except this one was a 5-year follow-up, and it says the results are good and the device should be used. But let's say you saw this and you decided that it was an independent validation and it looked good, and therefore you would try it on patients. Now tell me if the next slide changes your mind. It would appear that out of the 22 investigators, 12 of them had invested in the startup company to bring the device to market, and that they would lose money if the device did not get approved by the FDA. I say to you, you would now question whether the objectivity of the study and whether you really wanted to put it into your patients. This is called full disclosure. Now, this is the initial publication of the Charité FDA study. The majority of the authors are paid consultants. This is not revealed in this article, in this particular journal. It is revealed in the FDA transcript, which is posted on their website, but most people don't read that. And even if you do read it, you can only glean the name of a company associated with an individual. I would submit to you, I do submit to you that any reasonable individual would be much more cautious before acting upon the results of the study if they knew precisely the amounts of compensation that authors received and that the compensation can be enormous. The actual amount of money does make a difference, not only to people writing the paper, but more importantly to the readers, if they knew it. And currently they do not. Full disclosures are the answer. Currently, none of the major orthopedic and spinal surgical societies endorse complete disclosure. They are suggestive at best. This is a fairly extensive disclosure from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, but there is no dollar amount requested in any of these questions. There is really only one question, in my opinion, that needs to be answered. How much money in any form do you receive from a company? Period. It's very simple. Now, here's the basis of disclosures for arguably the major medical spine society in the United States, the North American Spine Society, NASS for short. Unfortunately, NASS had to decline being a part of this symposium. As you can see, all these levels attempt to put a dollar amount on things, but they really don't go far enough, in my opinion, and tell the truth. When you look at the last major category there, more than $10,000 total support per year or more than 5% company ownership, you can't tell if that's $11,000 or $1 million. And I submit to you that it would make a difference in anyone's opinion if they knew. If NASS and the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, with all its specialty societies, mandated full disclosures of precise dollar amounts, it is our belief that we would see that many of the board members are highly paid consultants for industry. And the societies that should be providing leadership and protecting patients may have many board members that are industry consultants. Because of this, the society's, which I believe, true and noble mission is unknowingly subverted for the sake of industry. We will not know the full extent of financial involvement unless complete disclosure is made. This needs to change. Now, another problem that adds to the bias is the intermixing of the regulatory bodies with those paid by industry. This is the FDA panel that voted on whether to approve the Charité disc replacement or not. The names in red have conflicts of interest which were acknowledged, but nevertheless they were allowed to be on the committee. And please note, I'm not condemning any of these individuals who are well accomplished and probably well-meaning, who may have only the highest goal. I am just condemning the system that allows this sort of cumulative set of biases to occur. This is a classic example of industry's influence in the FDA process. This is a letter from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons to the FDA suggesting guidelines for testing disc replacements. Ultimately, and this came out a couple months ago, almost all of these guidelines were incorporated and were for the last few years. As with most things, the devil is in the detail. This is the list of the committee members of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons that developed the guidelines that were submitted to the FDA. Note the name at the top, Bill Christensen, who is Vice President of DePuy Spine. And I can't help but think about the fox guarding the hen house here. This is the Vice President of the company making the product, being tested, participating in developing the guidelines for testing the product his company sells. This is aside from the other conflicted members you can see here highlighted in red. Anyway, this was at that point, it was a critical turning point in my thought processes. And having been struck by the severity of the patients that I had seen with such bad results and how a cumulative industrial bias and influence led down to really a breakdown in the scientific process, the Association for Ethics in Spine Surgery was born out of my head. I initially sincerely thought that I would be the only member. To my delight, 2 years from its inception, we now have 125 members spine surgeon members, and now 175 more requesting membership from 11 different countries, including Iraq, Egypt, Brazil, Sri Lanka, and India, among others. The members are all board-certified spine surgeons from any of the three major specialties: orthopedic, neurosurgical, osteopathic. Also, there can be affiliate physicians in pain management, physiatrists, as well as physical and occupational therapists. All have to sign affidavits that they do not accept money from industry. What do? We support the Sunshine Act, for which I testified in Senate hearings a few months ago, that calls for all medical device companies to list their consultants and their pay, period. This will allow 95% of well-meaning surgeons to know if a paper they read is truly independent for a procedure and go forward and do the procedure, or if it is not truly independent validation and decide not to do it or wait and see. And we support using evidence-based medicine to determine the value of data presented in scientific papers. What exactly is evidence-based medicine, or EBM? Now, forgive me, but it's important to just for a second go through this a little bit in detail. Evidence-based medicine. Data is assigned levels of value in terms of the scientific validity of the data. The highest level is 1, the lowest level is 5. Now, level 1 means that the study has to have an experimental group, which is what you're investigating, and has to be compared to a control group that has nothing done. For example, if someone claims that putting garlic cloves behind your ears cures back pain in 7 days, and therefore everybody should have it, it's meaningless if you have a control group that does not have garlic cloves put behind their ear, has nothing done, and their back pain goes away anyway in 7 days. Randomizing means that you randomly put patients in the control group or experimental, and you avoid the selection bias to get good results that Dr. Green was talking about. Good results with the experimental group, that you want to have good results. Now, level 2 is the next level down, has no randomization nor control, group with nothing done. Rather, patients in 2 different treatment groups are compared. Level 3 is looking backwards in time at things that were done in 2 groups and coming to conclusions. Level 4 is really a series of cases and concluding about something about them, even though there's no control or even comparison group. And level 5 is basically hearsay. My chief did it. He did it before, so therefore I do it. Now, conversely, for emphasis, we oppose not using evidence-based medicine, which is essentially what is shown here with the FDA guidance for industry that I was talking about that was released 2 months ago. As you can see here, the FDA says it's okay to use partially controlled studies, that it's fine to have trials without matched controls, and this is my particular favorite, that reports of significant human experience, in other words, hearsay, becomes official. And it seems to imply that if you can't improve the product to get it through the FDA, well, then you just sort of lower the standards. And this isn't only my opinion. This paper came out 3 months ago, and it's in regards to the poor levels of evidence used to evaluate the charité. Finally, AESS opposes industry trade groups for device manufacturers like AdvaMed that suggest changes to the Sunshine Act. They're simply doing industry's work, in our opinion, and to support less disclosure, which leaves patients and physicians at a disadvantage. And here are some of the suggestions you can see up there, that companies should not have a responsibility to report, only the individuals, that they should only report chosen values. They should not disclose physician payments until after the product is FDA approved. What will AESS do in the future? AESS is proud to announce now that for the first time anywhere, patients and doctors can access one website to find out exactly what consulting agreements any doctor has with any company. Instead of patients and physicians trying to access numerous sites, some of which can be somewhat obscure, and different links, and hoping to research the consulting agreements their doctor has, they can now simply go to ethicalspinesurgeon.org. And I want to be crystal clear, we're not opposed to getting money from a company, just to not revealing it. Secondly, ASS will continue to host significant groundbreaking symposiums, I think like this one, because this is groundbreaking in the sense this is the first time in medical history that I know of where complete disclosure in dollar amounts is what was done here, and that's provided in your brochures there. Precise dollar amounts of conflict. And there's more. Because of the really large response from medicine, physicians, patients in this country and actually around the world, we will now have an umbrella organization called the Association for Medical Ethics. This will include every specialty of medicine across the board. Once the Sunshine Act has been ratified, which I'm confident, as you are, it will be, the Association for Medical Ethics will provide a comprehensive list of doctors and their consulting arrangements by specialty. The site ethicaldoctor.org is born today at this symposium and will cover all physician searches in the future. Finally, ASS, in conjunction with the University of California, Irvine, will take the suggestions and thoughts from this symposium and put together a set of guidelines for industry relations and academia. We will publish our results and provide these guidelines for any organization or company that is interested. And hopefully this will start a revolution in medicine where only independently proven devices are the norm and complete disclosure is the standard. Thank you.